And what is up, YouTube? My name is G3 Iron, and we are here tonight with patch notes. We are 2 days, 17 hours, 50 minutes, and 35 seconds away from 3.5 Betrayal League dropping. And tonight what we're going to do is we're going to go through some of these various listed items on the patch notes. We are not going to go line by line as what we typically do in our countdown videos. There's just too much content here for us to go through line by line. And so what we're going to do is we're going to try and highlight as many things as possible from the table of contents, as much as we can get through here in this particular video. And then in the coming days, we'll do a couple of summary videos where we go a little bit more in depth into each of these things. But we're going to try and do an overarching view of what's going on here in patch notes tonight. I haven't taken a look at the patch notes yet. You're seeing my reactions live. I'm going to try and not do too many just reactions to things. I'd love to hear your reactions. So I'm going to ask you right away just to leave us a comment down below to let us know what your impressions are of the patch notes as you're listening to them, as you've been reading them, and as you're interacting with the patch notes. The couple of questions that I've got for you, and I'll reiterate this at the end of the video, but first off, did your build get affected in any way, the build that you were planning on playing in Betrayal? In other words, is what you were working on, are you already going to have to, crumple up whatever work you were doing and throw it in the trash? If not, that's great, fantastic. Second question, so first question, has your build changed at all? Second question is going to be whether or not you're stoked, particularly for the previous leagues to return in the ways that they will be returning. Namely, we're talking about Incursion, we're talking about Beastiary, and we're talking about Delve. So those are my two questions for you. You can debate that and drop a comment down below. Much appreciated. Thank you much. Without further ado, let's drop right in at the very top. The Betrayal Challenge League. Challenge leagues are a great opportunity for a fresh start in a new economy. All of your old characters and items are still present in standard and hardcore leagues, but you're encouraged to join the new league, complete challenges, and demonstrate your mastery in Path of Exile. All right, in 3.5, there's going to be standard and hardcore, and then solo and self-found. In Betrayal League, you will investigate the Immortal Syndicate, whose sinister operations have begun to appear across Rayclass and Oriath. Help the newest master, Zana, as she investigates the disappearance of several prominent exiles in relation to the sudden rise of the Immortal Syndicate. All right, you can track your progress on the investigation board and force the Syndicate members you defeat to bargain with you, betray their allies, face interrogation, or be executed. Use the information you gain from these actions to raid Syndicate safe houses. Battle your way through the safe houses to learn who leads the Syndicate. Gain valuable rewards based on who you defeat in each safe house, including items with powerful veiled mods. The new Challenge League includes a set of 40 new challenges, and from the 19th challenge onward, for every third challenge after that, you'll receive pieces of your Betrayal totem pole. Okay, so here's the major new content and features. There's a new roster of Masters. Alva, Nico, and Einhart have returned and have brought their respective league features with them. They, along with Zana and the Betrayal League's Zana, make up the new roster of Masters. Einhart's Beastiary content has been revamped. He now accompanies you on the hunt and manages nets for you. So right away, the number one primary thing that people complained about Beastiary, net management, it's already gone, it's done. So those of you that are complaining about Beastiary coming back, just take a deep breath, okay? Because they've already done something which is awesome, which is make everything automated through Einhar. We've overhauled the hideout system. Hideouts, favor, and decoration are now shared account-wide. You will now encounter hideouts throughout the game after rescuing Helena in Act 2. That's pretty exciting. So we're actually going to get hideouts relatively early, and it's going to happen alongside the story. You won't necessarily have to progress and master certain numbers of levels through it. They've overhauled master crafting. You now have a single crafting bench in your hideout that covers all item types and crafting mods. You now gain new crafting mods from a variety of different sources, including through exploration and helping the new masters. You can also overwrite previously crafted mods at the cost of an orb of scouring. They've added a new strength and dexterity skill gem, Shattering Steel. We've already talked about this in the reveal video. We've also already seen Lancing Steel, which is a new strength and dexterity skill gem. They've also added a new intelligence skill gem, Winter Orb, which is a channel and then shoot stuff near you. And they've added a new intelligence skill gem, which this was the first brand that was announced. It's the Storm brand. It creates a magical brand that can attach to a nearby enemy unit until it dies or expires. Then we've got the Armageddon brand, which I personally am very excited to mess around with and play with. And then we've got brand recall, which detaches your brands from enemies and returns them to you, reactivating their effect. Your brands will have increased branding range until they brand the next enemy. Okay, we've also added a new strength skill gem, the Dread Banner. We heard about banners with the banner release teaser. So we've got Dread Banner, then we've also got War Banner, and then we heard last week about multiple totems support. So some changes to totems coming in. So far, all of this is stuff that we've already been teased about. They've also added a new Dexterity and Intelligence support gem, the Bone Chill support. The supported skills have increased effective chill on enemies, and enemies in chilling area from supported skills take increased damage over time, which we heard about with the rework of some cold skills. All right, they've added a new skill, which is called Focus. Focus by itself does nothing, but new veiled items modifiers available in Betrayal League have powerful and build-enabling interactions with it. The focus skill is enabled when you equip any item with a mod that interacts with focus, but is not supportable. So it's just going to be like another toggleable option. Like you either have focus or you don't. And if you do, then you're going to start interacting with it. Added the advanced skill gem tutorial by clicking on the new button on the skill gem quest rewards throughout Act 1. You can see a preview of how that skill will act with a variety of different supports. So that's cool. There's a lot of new players coming into the league and coming into the game. So we're excited to have some more tutorial stuff. All right, we've added Atlas objectives, which we heard about with the teaser and the changes to the Atlas. Now, here's some of the new stuff. They've added 13 new unique items. They've added 1 new Fated Unique Prophecy. They've added 5 new Divination cards. They've added 13 new hideouts, added 3D art for the unique Body Armor Iron Heart, and they've added 5 new maps, which will replace existing base types, which we heard about through the Atlas. And they've added lab enchantments for new and reworked skills. My plan on day 1 is, and day 2 is to rush as much as I can to be able to farm Uber Labyrinth. And so joy to the world. Lab enchants just got even harder to farm because there's even more lab enchants that got added. All right, some minor new content and features. They've added a new Rogue Exile, so that'll be fun. Added physics interactions to many skills, including all of these listed here. The Lightning Mirage Nemesis mod now plays a noticeable sound when triggered, and then a whole bunch of other minor changes that are going on. So let's get into the master changes. What exactly is going on with the masters? Haku, Elrion, Tora, Katarina, Vagan, Leo, and Verici are no longer Forsaken Masters. In fact, they've disappeared entirely, and we're worried about them. Einhar Frey is now a Master. You can meet him in Act 2. He will help you capture beasts, which can be used to craft items at the Blood Altar in his Menagerie, aka the same thing as what was in Beastiary. Nico is now a Master. You're going to meet him in Act 4. Alva Valai is now a Master. You meet her in Act 7. Masters, including Zana, no longer have reputation levels. Features such as crafting bench options are, as a result, no longer unlocked by grinding Master missions and are instead unlocked by encountering specific locations, situations, or completing specific objectives. So, before anything else happens, before the very first person complains, because this is going to happen, it just is going to happen. Someone's going to complain about this. Someone is going to look back at the way how master rotations used to be and is going to go, oh, I wish I could have just grinded out my masters because then I wasn't RNG dependent on completing these specific objectives. How many people complained in Delve League that they never found an all? How many people in Beastiary complained that they never found the Feral Tiger? How many people in Incursion complained that they didn't get their temple set up the right way that they wanted it set up? This is just the nature of things. You can either grind forever and log in and have a daily chore chart of what you have to do, which is the way how Masters used to be, or you can have this kind of RNG play enough until you hopefully get this thing done. And this is the direction that we're moving in now. Hideouts are also no longer unlocked or improved through master grinding. Instead, Helena will help you unlock new hideouts found throughout the campaign. Zana's map device options and the items she sells are now unlocked based on your progress through the Shaper and Elder Quest line. She can now occasionally sell higher tier maps as well as sextants. Okay, character balance. Here we go. Added a new debuff, which is Impale. This applies for Lancing Steel and the like. When a hit applies Impale, a portion of that hit's physical damage is recorded before sources of damage mitigations are applied. The next 5 hits against that target apply that recorded damage as reflected physical damage. You can have multiple Impales on a target, which is awesome. Energy shield recharge is no longer interrupted by non-damage. You can no longer use skills that require a specific weapon if you're dual wielding. This was all stuff that came out in the the development manifesto yesterday. As a result of this change, so as a result of the stat sticks, for what everybody's been complaining about for the last 24 hours, as a result of this change, Ground Slam, Vol Ground Slam, Shield Charge, Leap Slam, Double Strike, Vol Double Strike, Reckoning, Ice Crash, Earthquake, Vol Earthquake, Sunder, Word of Light, Edict of Light, Decree of Light, Commandment of Light, Word of War, Edict of War, Decree of War, Commandment of War, Tectonic Slam, Consecrated Pass, Smite, Ancestral War Chief, and Vol Ancestral War Chief are no longer main hand only skills. So all of us that were wondering, hey, what are they going to do to all of these different skills? That's the answer. Added new stats. Non-ailment chaos damage overtime multiplier and cold damage overtime multiplier. Wow, those are really unwieldy stats. I'm just saying, those are really unwieldy to say. These affect their respective damage overtime types multiplicatively. The total amount that you can slow the expiration of an effect on a character through a time-slowing mechanism, like temp chains, now capped at 75%. Updated the remainder text for ailments to include the 3 new ailments. Updated how sources of additional maximum totems are described, and updated and improved various mod descriptions. Hey, that's great, because there's a lot of mod descriptions throughout the game that can be inconsistent and confusing for new players. All right, so they've done a rework to Arctic Breath. We've already heard about that. They've done a rework to Ice Spear. Already heard about that. Done a rework to Tectonic Slam. Already heard about that. We just read about the skill balance and how some things are going to be changed, but here's a couple more. Vol Haste, Vol Clarity, Vol Grace, Vol Discipline, Vol Impurity of Fire, Vol Impurity of Lightning, Vol Impurity of Ice, Vol Molten Shell, Vol Righteous Fire, and Gluttony of Elements from the Blood of Corruption Unique Amulet are now all instant with a very short cooldown. Tempest Shield is now instant, and it now also grants a +3 chance to block spell damage. Oh. You mean that thing that we destroyed in Delve? Block chance to spells? Anyway, that's funny. Vortex is now instant. Okay, with a 1.8 second cooldown. That's interesting. Ice Nova changes to some of the damage. Cold Snap, some changes to damage. Whirling Blades now uses weapon attack time plus 0.6 seconds rather than overriding your base attack time. While base weapon speed will have some effect, this change is intended to reduce the travel speed difference between characters using weapons' local attack speed modifiers and characters who are not. Interesting. So Whirling Blades hopefully will perform more consistently now. Leap Slam does the same thing. Molten Strike now deals 120% of base damage at gem level 1 and 161% of base damage, up from 147 at gem level 20. Projectiles deal 40% less damage at gem level 1 and 30% less damage from 40 at gem level 20. Huh. Okay. Phase Run now grants 50% reduced visibility to enemies, down from 80%. Yeah, so there goes darkness farming. For those of us that just like to darkness farm and be permanently invisible using Phase Run. Herald of Purity, minions summoned by the skill now deal more physical damage based on gem level rather than more damage. Okay, interesting. Herald of Agony, the Agony Crawler summoned by the skill now deals increased physical damage per virulence you have rather than increased damage. Okay, interesting. Support gem balance. Cast on critical strike. We've already heard about the cooldown reduction. Same on cast on melee kill. Block chance reduction support. Supported skills now have 10% reduced enemy block chance at gem level 1 and reduced enemy block chance at gem level 20, down from 29%. If a supported skill is blocked, it inflicts Overpowered, which reduces block chance by 5% for 4 seconds and can be applied any number of times. Wow. That's interesting. So if you override, if you break something's, if you have an attack that's blocked, then the chances of you being blocked consecutively go down by a lot. That's amazing. Okay, passive tree balance. Eldritch Battery now causes you to have 50% less energy shield charge rate. The Essence Surge cluster next to Eldritch Battery now grants a total of 30% increased energy shield. Wow, down from 60. It also grants a total of plus 60 to maximum energy shield. Okay. Faith and Steel near the Templar now also grants 10% increased energy shield recharge rate. Mental Rapidity between Witch and Templar now grants 10%. Okay. And one that's north of the Scion now grants 10% increase. Okay. Interesting. So some energy recharge buffs. Then we've added some passive skill clusters for the new brand skills. The Explosive Runes cluster between Templar and Witch increases damage with brand skills, brand attachment range, and allows you to cast an additional brand. Interesting. The Runesmith cluster near the Shadow grants increased damage with brand skills, brand attachment range, brand activation frequency, and causes your brands to deal increased damage to enemies they are attached to and allows you to cast an additional brand. All right, so right there, we've already got 2 sources of an additional brand. Added a new keystone adjacent to Ancestral Bond keystone, Rune Binder, -1 to maximum number of summoned totems. You can have an additional brand attached to an enemy. Okay. Like, so what's the drawback? Were they thinking that we were going to play, like, both totems as well as brands? Like, maybe that's what they went for with their testing? Interesting. The Ancestral Bond cluster now also offers increased damage with brand skills, increased brand attachment range, and increased brand activation frequency. The Shaman's Dominion cluster near the Witch now also offers increased critical strike chance with brand skills, increased damage with brand skills, and additional critical strike multiplier with brand skills. Okay. All right, and here's a bunch of modified cold and chaos damage spots, which we will take a look at tomorrow when we condense all of the notes and when we've had more of a chance to digest, as well as once Path of Building gets updated. Okay, Ascendancy balances. The Occultist gets a new notable, Withering Presence, plus 60% to Chaos Resistance, plus 20% to non-ailment Chaos Damage over time multiplier. Every second, inflict Withered on nearby enemies for 15 seconds. Interesting. Nearby hindered enemies deal 15% reduced damage over time. New notable, Frigid Wake. Cannot be chilled. Cannot be frozen. Huh. Plus 20% to cold damage over time multiplier. Every 3 seconds, 25% chance to freeze nearby chilled unique enemies 4.6 seconds. Every 3 seconds, freeze nearby chilled non-unique enemies for 6 seconds. Nearby chilled enemies deal 10% reduced damage with hits. Added a small passive leading to Withering Presence, which grants 8% increased maximum energy shield and plus 5% to non-ailment chaos damage over time multiplier. Added a small passive leading to Frigid Wake, which increases 8%, which grants 8% increased maximum energy shield and 5% to cold damage over time. Okay, interesting. Occultist getting like a bunch. Occultist is like now the cold archetype, I guess. Interesting. The Champion, new notable, Master of Steel, 20% chance to impale enemies on hits with attacks. That's cool, just straight up. Impales you inflict, last an additional 2 hits. Wow. If you've impaled an enemy recently, you and nearby allies have 1,000 to armor. Okay, you and nearby allies deal 4 to 8 added physical damage per impale on the enemy. Okay, so the way how this is worded, you and nearby enemies deal 4 to 8 added physical damage per impale on the enemy. That makes me think that it's damage to that particular enemy, not damage to other enemies. That's what that makes me think of. But that would be interesting, like if you could stack a bunch of impales on something, and as long as you have impales up, you're essentially doing a bunch more flat added damage. That can't be how that works. It's got to be that just, hey, it's going to be added damage to that enemy. I guess it's just added as a roll, like after you hit it. That's just interesting. The way how that's worded is interesting. Maybe I'm making a mountain out of a molehill. Let's keep going. Added a small passive leading to Master of Metal, which grants 15% increased evasion and armor and 8% increased impale effect. Inspirational now also causes your banner skills to reserve no mana, recover 20% of planted banner stages when you cast a banner while you have a banner planted, and causes you and nearby allies to recover 0.5% of maximum life per banner stage when you plant a banner. It now also grants 15% increased effect of non-curse auras from your skills. Interesting champion changes. All right, the Hierophant. New notable. Sign of Purpose. You can cast an additional brand. So that's now 3? It's either 3 or 4 brands that you can now have as additional brands. Enemies take 10% increased damage for each of your brands attached to them. Brand Recall has 30% increased cooldown recovery speed, 14% increased brand attachment range. Added a small passive leading to Sign of Purpose, which grants 20% increased mana regeneration and 14% increased damage with brand skills. Ritual of Awakening no longer grants +1 to maximum number of summoned totems. Instead, it now causes skills that would summon a totem to summon 2 summons to summon 2 totems instead, and grants 3% more damage per totem. All right, item balance. Molten Strike, Labyrinth Helmet enchantments now grant 1 additional projectile from Merciless, down from 2, and 2 from the Eternal, down from 3. Okay, so Molten Strike helms just went Legacy, so buy them on Standard if you can grab one. Because 3 projectiles just went legacy. Tectonic Slam, Labyrinth Helm enchantments now grant increased chance to charge Slam. Okay, don't really care about Tectonic Slam. Sorry. Changes to Ice Spear, changes to Vortex. Items exclusive to the Shaper Guardians and the Elder Guardians now drop less frequently. Okay, so a nerf to exclusive item drops. Uniques exclusive to the Elder Guardians now also drop based on map tier, with some items unable to drop until higher map tiers. Okay, so we wanted bosses to feel more rewarding, so we're just going to make them more rare. Okay, we haven't gotten to the unique changes yet, so maybe those items all got buffed. We don't know yet. But that seems interesting. They're just making things more rare. Just because something's going to be more rare doesn't mean it's better. The Elder Bow that the Elder drops is not better simply because it's more rare. Shaper and Elder items and jewels can now gain mods that affect non-ailment, chaos damage over time, and cold damage over time. Interesting. Ruby, Sapphire, and Topaz flasks no longer grant added maximum resistances. Instead, they each reduce the damage taken of their respective elements by 20%. What? Okay. So, no more... no. Somebody will figure out a way to do it, but at the moment, no more max res. Like, no more 100% res builds. The Shaper weapon mods, I'm trying to hold back my reactions here and thoughts. We're just trying to plow through these, but that's... It's not a big change in terms of, like, the meta, and there were hundreds of people doing it, but there were some builds out there that took advantage of that, and they were awesome. Because of how they min-maxed their resistances based off of their flasks. Anyway, continuing on, the Shaper weapon mods, which cause you to gain a portion of physical damage as extra cold, fire, or lightning, or extra damage of a random element, grant half as much extra damage. Okay, so everybody complaining about stat sticks and saying they just ought to change the numbers. Well, they're doing both. They changed the way how dual wielding works, and they slash the numbers. Amulets are unaffected by this change, and this does not affect existing items. Existing versions can be updated to these new values with the Divine Orb. Oh, boy, they can be updated. That means don't divine anything that's in Standard, because it will get a new value and it won't have that legacy value on it. The Dying Anguish Divination card can no longer drop. It will return in the future with some modifications. Interesting. All right, unique item balances. All right, Aegis Aura now has 300 to 400% up from 80 to 100% increased armor and energy shield. Existing versions can be updated. New versions of Oxium no longer have 10 to 20% increased elemental damage with attack skills. They now have 20 to 25, so that's a buff. Wow, with attack skills per power charge, that's great. Crown of Eyes will now cause you to leech from all types of attack damage, not just physical attacks. That's cool. Cloak of Defiance now has 300 to 400% up from 110 to 150 increased evasion and energy shield. Okay. Existing versions can be updated to these new values with a Divine Orb. Mjolnir's Trigger now has a cooldown of 150 down from 250. This affects all versions. That's a big deal. So Mjolnir's back on the menu, everybody. Hiri's Ire now adds a bunch more flat damage. Wow, a bunch more. That's triple the damage. Cold damage to attacks with bows. It no longer adds cold damage to all attacks. Okay. Existing versions can be updated with the Divine Orb. Carcass Jack now grants 40 to 50% up from 20% increased area of effect. Existing versions can be updated. New versions of Bringer of Rain now support socketed skills with level 18 blind and faster attacks. Interesting. Doriani's Fist now adds a bunch of flat, but it's down. It got nerfed. Huh. It got nerfed on its physical. No, it got nerfed on its lightning. Interesting. Interesting. Okay. They must have found something with Doriani's. Lion's Eye's Vision now has dexterity requirement of 160. Duresso's Defiance now grants Onslaught for 5 up from 2 seconds per endurance charge when hit. Okay, that's pretty nice. Malachi's Artifice no longer has reduced elemental equilibrium effect. Geodre's Skin no longer reduces the effect of your curses. Okay, interesting. Extractor Mentis now has 10% up from 5% chance to gain Unholy Might. Okay, very nice. Shade of the Solaris now grants 200% up from 120 increased spell damage if you've dealt a crit in the past 8 seconds. Cool, and that's rather than recently, so that essentially doubles the timer that you have to crit. The Brine Crown now has 240 to 300% up from 100 to 120 increased armor and energy shield. Okay. It now grants 80 to 100 life up from 50 to 70. So that's a pretty big amount of life on that particular unique. Light of Lunaris got a buff to its energy shield as well as chance to block. Kitava's Feast got a slight buff to its damage in its physical damage. Arakali's Fang now has, wow, a huge chance. Now has a 100% chance, up from 20% chance on kill to trigger Ray Spiders. Like, you're just going to raise spiders, period. The Ray Spider skill triggered by this item has also undergone the following changes. Adjusted visual and audio effects of the Ray Spider skills. Ray Spider now has a cooldown of 2 seconds and has a 100% chance to trigger on kill. The Ray Spiders now have 100% more movement speed, a longer attack range, and a base duration of 30 seconds. Wow. Okay. Tidebreaker now has some more physical damage. It got upped. Okay, cool. Interesting. Martyr of Innocence, increased fire damage is no longer conditional. Okay, that's nice. All right, let's jump down here. Grellwood Shank now has 185 to 215, up from 170 to 190 increased physical. Okay, so some buffs to just weapons across the board. This makes sense. Okay, so for a lot of these one-handers especially, they're going to get buffs because they're no longer going to be used in conjunction with those massive DPS stat sticks that we've all become accustomed to using, those of us that dual wield or used to dual wield. Snake Pit no longer causes your spells to fire an additional projectile. Instead, it now causes projectiles from spells to fork, but prevents them from chaining while in the left ring slot, and grants +1 chain to projectiles from spells, but prevents them from forking while in the right. Yep, I believe we saw that. Silver Tongue no longer causes arrows to pierce all targets after chaining. Okay, interesting. Reach of the Council, we saw that as well. Queen of the Forest. Here's our Queen of the Forest nerf right here, or change. Queen of the Forest now grants 1% increased movement speed per 600, up from 450 evasion rating, up to 75%, down from 100. Oh, that's a bummer. Queen of the Forest. We hardly knew ye. Impulsa's Broken Heart. Shocked enemies you kill explode, dealing 5% of their maximum life as lightning damage, which cannot shock, is no longer has a range of 5 to 10%, and is now just permanently set at 5%. So Impulsa's lives. Like, I'm sorry, I don't see that as that big of a nerf. Like, that's not a redirect, or sorry, that's not a redesign. That's just, oh well, the problem with Impulsas was the numerical value of 5 to 10%. No, Impulsas is still going to be around. Okay, Sintrek now has 100 to 150 energy shield. Wow. Sedima's Touch now increases the quantity of items found from slain enemies by 5 to 10%, down from 12 to 16. Nerfing Magic Find. Okay, Quill Rain now causes you to deal 40% less damage as opposed to weapon damage. This affects all versions. Windripper. Hey, I called that yesterday. We're going to have Windripper changes. Windripper now has 30 to 40%, down from 60 to 80. Increased critical strike chance. And the cold damage got nerfed as well. Lightning damage got changed. Huh. Interesting. Yeah, so Windripper, it'll be a little bit harder to proc that you're critting stuff and exploding because you're killing frozen stuff. Chinsoul now deals 50%, down from 100 more damage with arrow hits at close range, and has 200 to 260 increased physical damage. So Chinsoul now is much better at distance, but is worse at close range. The whole point of using Chinsoul. Okay. Interesting. Divination Distillate no longer provides additional maximum resistances during Flask effect, and instead provides plus 50% to all elemental resistances during Flask effect. Yeah, they want. So this is a very clear design decision. They want resistances to be capped at 75%, and if you go over that, to be a very rare piece of gear that allows you to do that rather than simply 3-year flasks. So rest in peace, Flasks. We hardly knew ye. Spine of the First Claimant now grants plus 25 to 35% to cold damage over time multiplier. Interesting. All right, and a couple others. Flesh and Spirit no longer grants 5 souls for Vol skills on Rampage, and now causes kills to grant an additional Vol soul if you've Rampaged recently instead. Okay, Zerphis. Here was the Zerphis change. Zerphi's Last Breath now grants a buff when you use a skill during the FLASKS effect. The buff recovers 450 to 600% of the skill's mana cost as life per second. This buff and the healing is removed when you are hit. This affects all versions of the item. The buff and the healing is removed when you're hit. So it used to be that for Poet's Pen, like Indigan, Zerphies, you just stood. It didn't matter if you were getting hit. You could just stand there and just keep spamming stuff, and as long as you were using mana, you were fine. But now, if that buff is going to get removed when you're hit, it doesn't mean that it's a broken interaction. It just means that you're going to have to pay attention now and don't get hit. But if the whole point is don't get hit, I mean, what's the point of having all that increased regen? I guess it helps against like stuff on the ground, I guess. Stuff that's technically not hits, but interesting. Blood of Corruption's Gluttony of Elements skill now prevents those affected by the aura from gaining Vol Souls. This affects all versions of the item. Okay, so we're going to have to do something different for that. Clarified the description on Skold's Bridal mod to clarify it does not apply when spending mana on a reservation. Okay, well, holy moly, they weren't lying about a lot of unique changes. There are a lot of unique changes. Monster changes. The Rogue Exile Ultima Thule now uses the updated version of Ice Spear. Okay, we don't really care. Blood Chieftains can now hurl Blood Apes at you. Hey, there's that Blood Ape. There's that Markov chain description about Blood Apes being thrown. There's the reference there. Temple of Atzoatl changes. The level of the present-day temple is now the average level of each incursion plus 10, capped at the highest level incursion for that temple. Okay, interesting. Azerite Mine and Sulfite changes. Player depth notifications are now only announced every 50 depth levels, so you won't get spammed with updates. Okay, I like that, sort of. I liked seeing every level that people got to. That was cool. Slightly reduced the damage dealt by darkness based on player life and energy shield, and added a small amount of flat damage per darkness stack. Yeah, I'm actually going to go back to this for a second. This is I'll just rant on this just for a moment. If you didn't like getting announcements, global announcements about other people's achievements in Delve, turn off the announcements. You can do that in options. Like one of the things that's so great about playing a league when it first drops, is seeing the first people to get to different zones and to see where everybody's at. On the one hand, it's incredibly demoralizing because like you'll enter Act 2 and you're like, hey, I think I'm doing pretty well, and somebody else is like in Act 7, and you're like, what? How did they even do that? But that adds an appreciation for the game. It's a huge advertisement for, look, there's a lot of different ways that you can play this game and get very, very efficient and become very, very skilled at this game as well. So if you don't want to see those updates, you can just turn them off. So I'm kind of torn on that. That's interesting. Every 50 depth levels. Like I look at the players that have pushed, like when MP and his group went for 3K or when Havoc went for 6K. Like that was amazing to follow every single level and every single depth that they went down, and to see that and to be notified of that was cool. It was cool to be in raid classes that was going on because you felt as though history was being made and you at least were a part of it. You could see and say where you were when you saw somebody hit a certain depth. Every 50 doesn't mean it's not going to happen anymore. It just means it'll be different, and the rate at which we'll see those announcements will be less. Okay, so Azerite Mine, other stuff. The Pulsating Grotto encounter now lasts longer before the boss appears. Monster from this encounter awards significantly more experience when slain. Good. Reduce the number of Ursay that plummet in the Plummeting Ursay encounter. We like more monsters, not less, but okay. Special encounters now drop more rare items and a wider variety of items as well. Fossils and resonators are now found more frequently behind fractured walls and less frequently in the more accessible areas, so if you want fossils, bring dynamite. Okay. Voltaxic sulfite acquisition values have been adjusted to account for the new rate at which you encounter voltaxic sulfite veins. So in other words, they better go up, fellas. Why did the patch notes say they've been adjusted rather than just say they go up? Because we don't encounter it all that often. All right, Beastiary and Menagerie changes. Your Beastiary book is now account-wide. If you catch a beast in one league, it'll be recorded in your Beastiary in all other leagues in perpetuity. The itemized beasts themselves are still league-specific. There is now a global capture limit of 1,000 beasts rather than a per-genus limit. The previous total maximum was approximately 680, though most players were likely to hit genus-specific limits. Beast crafting recipes have been completely reworked and simplified. Non-spirit beast uniques beasts can't appear in the Menagerie or Beastiary. Prophecy changes. Adjusted the weightings of many prophecies. Okay, interesting. You can now complete the steps of many prophecy chains in various maps. That is an excellent change. Prophecies which can trigger in maps no longer lock their triggers to specific maps out of their possible pool. In other words, if you attempt to open a map where a prophecy might trigger and it doesn't, it may trigger next time you open it. Previously, if it did not trigger in that map, it never would. Oh, that's good. That's a bug fix. That's nice. Prophecies that previously forced the appearance of one of the old masters now force the appearance of a new one. Okay, makes sense. All right, a bunch of different map changes here. Let's jump on down to Zana in 3.5. Zana is going to give us Anarchy for 2 Chaos. Okay. Torment, areas inhabited by 4 tormented spirits. Fortune favors the brave at 3 Chaos. One of these options will be applied at random. Alternate of the same tier, very nice for solo self-found, costs 1 Chaos Orb, requires a rare map, opens a rare map of the same tier, excluding the map you placed in the device. Domination costs 3 Chaos Orbs, area contains 3 extra shrines, fun. Parandus is back, area has a 33% chance to contain Kadairo Parandus, area contains 3 additional Parandus chests. So Parandus is back this league, so get your Parandus coins out. Shaped tiers 1 through 5 costs 2 Chaos Orb, requires a rare map. Cool. Breach, hey, Breach is back, requires 4 Chaos Orbs. Area can contain breaches with 2 additional breaches. So imagine using Breach plus using the Breach Scarab. Anyway, yeah, that'll be fun. Harbinger is back for 4 Chaos. Area can contain Mysterious Harbingers. Area contains 2 extra Harbingers. Shaped tier 1 through 10. Abyss is back. Okay, interesting, for 5 Chaos Orb. And then Elder tier 1 through 15 costs 15 Chaos, requires a rare map. All right, Strongbox changes. The Stream of Monsters Strongbox. Wow, say that 10 times fast. The Stream of Monsters Strongbox mod now spawns monsters much more quickly. Wow, could they have written that with any more S and M words? All right, and can spawn magic and rare monsters. This mod can now only appear in areas of level 35 or higher. Okay, user interface improvements. That's great. This is nice, the leave guild button. I've left our guild like several times and had to have other people invite me just because I do so many trades and I accidentally leave the guild. Quest rewards. Zana map rewards have been updated. PvP changes. Who really cares? I don't care. And then a bunch of bug fixes. So there we go, folks. Those are the patch notes. This is incredible. The couple of things to highlight. Impulsas. Where is it? The change that I thought it was going to get nerfed, and I guess technically it did, but now it's just stuck at 5% instead of 5 to 10%. So that's really not that big. Mjolner is back. Like, it's going to be back. Where's the first one? Yeah, Mjolner's trigger is going to be back, and COC is going to be back. So those are 2 of the big ones. Poet's Pen did not get nerfed. Like, the only thing that changed was in PvP. So it could be that its drop rates got nerfed, but it didn't get nerfed. And then look at this, folks, Headhunter. Like, I'm searching for Headhunter. Headhunter doesn't show because it's not getting nerfed, at least not shared in the patch notes. So those are the patch notes. Leave us a comment down below. My question at the start of the video was, hey, do these patch notes affect your build in any way? That's the first one. Does this change what you were planning on building? And then the second question is, based on these patch notes for previous leagues, so for Beastiary, for Incursion, and for Delve, are you okay with them? Do they look thumbs up or thumbs down for you? And what you envision the old league content coming into the new league content. For me, it sounds great. It sounds like we're going to be able to delve for people that want to delve, for people that want to farm their temples, they can farm their temples, and for people that want to catch beasts, you know, that want to find fantastic beasts and know where to find them, they're going to be able to do that. So I'm pretty stoked. I'm probably going to take the next 12 to 14 hours just to go over the patch notes again in more detail. We'll wait until there's some more news that comes out in terms of third-party programs, specifically Path of Building. If you don't know what Path of Building is, you can check out one of our videos on it in our PoE Tools playlist, where we go into Path of Building and just how helpful it is. It is an exceptional program. But once that's out with all of the updates to the Passive Tree, it'll be great. We'll really be able to start the whirlwind that is building our builds, our starter builds, and planning out for the drop for December 7th, because we are 2 days, 17 hours, 11 minutes, and 7 seconds away from Betrayal. So get hype, everybody. Patch notes are here, and we can start theory crafting.